Welcome to Multifamily Excellence, the podcast that explores the ever-evolving world of the multifamily industry. I'm your host, Tony Sousa. In each episode, I'll spend time with a world-class multifamily leader to learn how they continuously push boundaries for excellence. You'll get to hear their perspective on career progression, leadership philosophies, and strategies for operational excellence.
I think it's putting the residents first. At the end of the day, if the customer's first, and whether that's the prospective resident, the resident that lives there, or the resident that moved out, we've got so much data at our hand that clients and investors are all looking for answers to why this and why that, and how can you change this or change that, and drawing a graph. And at the end of the day, if I provide great service, if I provide a clean environment, if I provide a place that somebody wants to call home, all of those other things are going to be answered. And if you go back in time, we didn't have as much data at our hands. And so we weren't on calls all day answering 18,000 questions. We were offering the service. And that's the place where we've got to find some solutions, in my mind, is really just remembering the whole reason that we are here, to provide a comfortable, clean environment that I want to call home and that feels like a sense of community. And that's what we're driving home to our people.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Multifamily Excellence. I'm Tony Sousa, and today's episode is brought to you by With Me. With Me makes people's lives better every day through convenient technology-enabled solutions for the multifamily apartment industry and beyond. Today's guest is someone name who's become synonymous with operational excellence and human-centered leadership in multifamily, Renee Zahn. Renee is the managing director of real estate at Greystar, where she oversees the Central West Division and a portfolio of over 50,000 units. She spent more than 2 decades at Greystar helping scale the company from humble roots to a global force, and all while leading with clarity, compassion, and just the right amount of Texas candor. We know about that candor. She also is former president of the Austin Apartment Association and currently the president-elect of the Texas Apartment Association as well, and a relentless advocate for growing this industry in the right way. Renee, welcome to the show. It is wonderful to have you.
Man, Tony, I want you to be my hype man every time.
That's it. Everywhere you go, I'm just going to give you that intro and we're going to roll with it.
Yeah, your intros make you feel really special. I like the humble Texas part of it.
That candor, right? We're going to get into that candor. I know that's coming.
All right.
Renee, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Let's start as we typically do with most of our guests here. Path into multifamily. Obviously, I think we all have different stories in this way. Yours, I think from our research, obviously started by chance, as many did. But then there was something that shifted, right? So tell us a little bit about your story and what made you realize that maybe this could be a long-term industry and career for you.
You bet. So, I think I've shared this story many times, and none of us, I'm not going to say none of us, it is rare that you find someone that says, I want to be an apartment manager when I grow up.
Yeah, it's not like a third grade thing, right?
Nope. Wasn't doing a presentation on it in junior high. I think that my aunts and uncles in Oklahoma still think that I am like the Ropers, and I'm in the bottom unit of a fourplex in my bathrobe.
Are you a landlord just roping in the rent there? Jeez, get a real job, would you?
That's what they think. But at the end of the day, it was after the dot-com bubble. I had graduated from the University of Texas, and I thought that you graduated, they handed you a briefcase and a BMW and a cute suit, and you were off on your way at an ad agency. Off on your merry way. Yes, and I was still slinging margaritas and trying to upsell guacamole at Chili's. And
would you like guacamole with that? Right?
That's right. That's an extra 69 cents, and we need to rack those tips up. So I needed something on the resume, and who is now my husband was courtesy officer at an apartment community, and a friend of ours said, you should go apply for a job. So I found an ad in the paper. Yes, that when you mentioned that I had been here for 2 decades, that's where you know that I applied from an ad in the paper.
I didn't mean to age you, Renee. Listen,
that's all right.
I just wanted to give you great experience.
I think I like 2 decades better. I like it. Sounds good. And I faxed my resume for a job, and there I was leasing apartments. And, it was fun. You were meeting new people every day and helping them find their place to live. And it was at the fanciest apartment building I'd ever been to. I didn't live at one nearly as fancy as the one I was working at. So it also felt a little fancy. You got to put on real clothes every
As
day.
the kids say, a little bougie, right?
A
Like
little
this was,
bougie. Yeah, a little bougie. And it was fun. It was really fun. It was flexible. I had, holidays off. I wasn't working evenings and smelling like fajitas when I got
you
home.
you had paid time off, right? Oh,
Uh,
PTO. What is this PTO?
Vacation, right? I could not show up
I
and
got
still
paid
get
to
a
go on
paycheck.
vacation. This is amazing.
Yes, that was a big deal. That was a big
Yeah.
deal. And, I think honestly where I decided to make it my career was, flash forward a couple years, I actually went back to school. I'd
Hmm.
always thought I wanted to be a teacher, and
Yeah.
I was getting a master's degree, and I realized I was an assistant manager at the time, and I realized I was going to take a pay cut
Mm.
to go be a teacher. God bless and thank you for those that are teachers in this world because it is a big job, and I thought I wanted it for the schedule and all of the things that would make raising a family really perfect.
Yeah.
But I just also realized I was only an assistant manager, and I had kind of this like endless opportunity that I wasn't going to go find in another avenue. And so I just decided I was 6 hours shy of a master's degree, and I got to that student teaching portion, and I said, I think I'm going to stick where I am. And
So Renee, are you like 6 hours, like 6 units away from? Don't remind you, or
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I needed two more classes, and
yeah,
at the time, it just didn't make sense. And then, you know, I don't know that a master's degree in elementary education is going to really make a
propel
big
your career
difference,
next level at this
propel
point?
my career at this point.
Fair
Yes.
enough. Well, so talk to me a little bit about that because we see that you were that close, and we know now like how that all worked, how close you were to getting your master's, obviously in education. But what made you want to stay here? Was it just you talked a little bit about the income, but I think what really drew you from your answer, from what I could tell, is just the diversity of experiences, and it just felt like possibly an opportunity to grow your career in a fun and exciting way.
It felt like it was answering all of these questions. It was
Mm.
sales. There was a sales side. So there was meeting new people every day. There was the leadership side. There was kind of the accounting side. You
Mhm.
get into the assistant manager and manager duties, and you start really understanding a P&L and why someone would choose to
Now, for
invest
those
in.
listening who don't know what a
Oh.
P&L is, right? Profit and loss statement, a financial statement to
So,
your former
so
self.
you started to learn, you started to figure out, oh, there's like some really important decisions we're making. Like we're really impacting how this business operates, and we're getting to see how people and the human side of the business can grow in so many different
Mm,
directions. Early in our careers, we didn't have marketing departments. And when companies were small, we didn't have marketing departments and construction management departments and all of those
yeah,
other things. You were doing it all. And
right.
so you really were learning so many different sides of the coin. And so
Hmm.
if it itched if you thought you wanted to go be in real estate, it itched some of that, but you weren't straight commission based. You had a
Yeah.
salary to back it up. If you thought you wanted to be in investment, it could itch some of that. If you were great
Hmm.
at sales, it itched some of that. And
Right.
so it just, I guess, maybe scratched a lot of itches, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
And I got to be around a lot of great people.
Yeah, it's interesting visual, a very itchy Renee. All kidding aside, obviously you've been with Greystar, probably the most widely recognizable, respected firm in our business for 2 decades. We won't say how many years that is, but do the math at home. Um, Tell us a little bit about that. That's a unique situation, especially with today's workforce, probably and generation. That length of time. Tell us a little bit about the longevity and what has caused you to stay that long. Obviously, you've had an incredibly successful career. That may be a part of it, but there's got to be more to that.
I think it was that I'd always there was still an opportunity around every corner. So when you're at the site level, it was, I could go do a lease up. I could
Hmm.
do, a renovation. I could go to the first mid-rise building. And then once it grew into other areas, I was over client services for a chunk
Hmm.
of time. And so there just always was something new around the
Hmm.
corner that kept me engaged. I'm not going to say that along the way when you've been with a
Sure.
company this long that a recruiter isn't calling, that you're not
Sure.
talking or considering other options. One thing that has always also kept me grounded is I was very committed. My husband and I kind of decided we were going to raise our family and stay in Austin, Texas. And
Okay.
it did get harder to figure once you get to a certain point, if a company isn't centered in Austin, if you weren't willing to move, some of those conversations got shut
Yeah,
down.
and the
And my
reality is sorry to cut you off, Renee, but I mean the reality is that Austin, Texas was different 2 decades ago than it is today,
totally,
right?
totally.
Maybe less opportunities than even today. It's a huge city today than 2 decades ago.
That's right. That's right. So
Hmm.
we had kind of made that commitment. He's now a retired law enforcement officer. And our kids are we have one graduating on Friday.
Oh,
No,
congratulations.
no sad tears
Looks
here.
like
I'm
there's some
trying
mixed
to
feelings there.
mixed feelings. It's grieving for parents. It
Yeah,
is a little bit of grieving, but trying to celebrate them.
yeah.
Anything could happen. I'm open to getting rid of Texas summers, that's for sure, as it's 100 degrees this week.
Any sneak peeks to any parts of the country you guys are looking at all, or
Oh my gosh, take me to the mountains at any time.
okay, all right.
Colorado would call my name. Maybe Nashville, Tennessee would call my name.
Those are
But yeah,
obviously some hot markets, obviously that'll allow you to continue to flourish in your career, but also maybe not die during those Texas summers, right?
that's right.
So in our research, we saw you've mentioned a time or two, sort of this what you've described, I think, as a shoulder tap moment in your career, when someone essentially has come to you and says, "Hey, I think you're good at this," or "I think you have potential here." Talk to us a little bit about those moments. I think there's a lot of people in our industry that are hoping for a lot of those moments, and sometimes they come and sometimes they don't. It sounds like you've probably had a lot of those opportunities, and if I was to guess today, you provide a lot of those opportunities to say, "Hey, here's a shoulder tap. Did you know that you may be great at this?" Can you talk a little bit about your experience, both being tapped, if you will, maybe earlier in your career, and then opportunities you see as a leader today in the portfolio you oversee, about sort of bringing that culture to your portfolio and to your leadership team?
You bet. I think that one of the things that is going to make any person in this industry so successful is just being flexible.
Hmm.
Um, you know, Being flexible, sometimes I think people do get stuck in the property management side that they want to be on the shiny new property.
Sure.
Sometimes where you're going to really make an impact isn't the shiny new one. It is the one that requires you to dig in and do a lot of work and really make an impact. I remember my dad always telling me, if you got handed a book of business that was already performing, all you can do is
Go
the
down.
same or go
or,
down,
or, or
right?
yeah,
Or go down.
maintain
And
or go
so
down, right?
that's right. And so
Hmm.
if you get one that isn't performing, that's where you get the opportunity to really make an impact. And so I think just making sure that you know what your skills are, and that if you do ever get a tap on the shoulder, or even if you just hear, "Hey, we're really looking for someone," maybe you say, "Well, did you ever think of me for that?"
Hmm.
Because perhaps they hadn't thought of you, but the moment you put that in their mind, that's where that opportunity comes about. And when you talk about thinking about someone else, there's someone that has worked on my team for a long time. And I remember many years ago when I was a regional, she was an assistant manager, and she came and interviewed for a manager gig, and it was a really tough client. And I just knew that though their personalities were not going to jive, but there was something about her that, like, I was like, I want her on my team. Like, she has a skill that I know is great. I just have to find the right place. And we had a new lease up. This was kind of 2013 timeline. And it was this mid-rise, like really modern deal. And it needed like
Fancy.
creative, spunky, and it needed creative, spunky energy.
Yeah.
And she was the first phone call I made. And I was like, I know you didn't get chosen for this other one, but it was all for a purpose.
Hmm.
Now I have the spot. And she has just risen to the occasion
Wow.
ever since, because you're trying to think about matching. You're thinking
Right.
about, you have this skill, and where am I going to find the seat on the bus that is just a perfect match for you?
It's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. I talk to a lot of people, and you probably do too, about that same thing. Is how do you get identified for those opportunities? I feel like people will say to me, and I'm sure you hear this as well. I feel like I get overlooked, or I feel like I don't get the opportunities I want, and I give them some different advice. But I'd love to get your thoughts on how do you stay on the top of someone's mind, or on the tip of someone's tongue, right? Or just the metaphor that I'm using is, how do you stay relevant and sort of top of mind for your supervisor or a leader, that opportunities when they do arise, that you get that first call, or you get those initial calls? Is there a way that candidates or employees can position themselves to be ready and in the eye of the leaders, if you will?
Sure. I think, first of all, I think there's a little bit of a drip campaign.
Hmm.
I think it's the
Tell us what you
follow
mean
up.
by, I think I
Drip
know what you mean
campaign,
by
right?
that, but I mean, you're kind of putting yourself out there on
Yeah.
a consistent basis, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And I think just like we follow up with our prospects,
Hmm.
it's following up with them and saying, with the moment you weren't chosen for something, saying, I totally understand. I sure would love your feedback as to
Hmm.
how I could make an impact. And then I think,
And
I could
also
think
that, like, I'd love to be considered for the next,
the
right?
next one. And three
Hmm.
months later, it's a follow up that says, I took that feedback to heart and I want to
Hmm.
share with you how it's made an impact in my performance.
So good. Yeah.
Like if I came to you and I said I listened and I made
Took action.
took action with it, that is so incredible. I
Yeah.
have another leader on my team that we put in a role that was not the right fit for her. And
Happens. Yeah.
she kind of knew it. And she
Hmm.
is like wicked smart. I mean, wicked smart. And I said, "Oh my God, we've got to find the right seat for you." And she actually took a step backwards and went to this site level, back to a site level manager
Hmm.
position, super hard gig. And then we realized she had this expertise in affordability, like managing affordable housing. She wrote her own job description. She
That's
messaged
when
me,
that's when you're doing well, right? Or you're doing
yes,
a job well. Yeah.
she messaged me and she said, wait, we need help. We need help in this department. And here's how I'm going to do it. And here's all the things I'm going to do. Here's the timeline it's going to take. Here's the right salary based on my research.
Wow.
And I'll be darned, in 90 days, we made it for her.
I was gonna
And
say, yeah, she did the job of her supervisor or leader, right? Like
she
to the
did.
T.
She did, and she now has a team. She now has a
Wow.
leader that reports to her. She is growing that department
Wow.
and has done a great job. And it was just that she needed to figure out the right seat
Yeah.
on the bus and what she was great at.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that story. So many insightful. I love this drip campaign that you started it with. Is just kind of putting yourself out there and getting in front of leaders and supervisors along the way. So obviously the show is called Multifamily Excellence. Let's talk a little bit about excellence and what that may mean to you. What does multifamily excellence mean to you, and especially in the context of technology and operations? I know it's kind of a broad question, so feel free to take it wherever you like.
I thought about this one, and there's
Mhm.
two things that resonate with me. I think first and foremost, we've got to make things easier.
Mm,
It is, we've instituted so many new things that our teams are responsible for. We have not done a great job of taking things off of their plates.
mm,
They're still answering the phone. They are still taking in people coming in off the street that are looking for an apartment, that are logging a service request. But in the background, they're supposed to be following up on that drip campaign. They're supposed to be making a TikTok video. They're
mm.
supposed to be, following up with every lead and doing all of these things that are advancing technology with surveys and getting feedback, but also just being front and center for customer service.
Yeah.
And I think that we've got to just make things a little easier,
Hmm.
easier for our team members, easier for our residents. And that's the place that I'm really exploring for my teams over the
Yeah.
next couple of years. Start to take some things off of their plates as opposed to continuing to add them.
Well, I think you make a great point, and obviously, I think there's a kind of a reassessment happening in our business, right? Of saying, okay, like what is needed and what's not. But ultimately, it comes down to, I mean, can you be excellent at everything? The answer is no, you can't. But can you be excellent at really the things that you have gifts in, or that you're well prepared and you have the tools for? Absolutely. And can you drive excellence further? That really kind of leads me to the next question. You've been in the industry, for a while now. We've mentioned a couple of decades, but from the wide lens, now that you sit overseeing 50,000 plus units and interacting probably coast to coast with other leaders, where is that opportunity to continue to drive excellence? Is it in kind of stripping away and stripping back the complexity of the business, maybe, and then focusing on what we do best and driving it in that way? Um, Somewhat of a general question, and maybe it's just kind of bouncing off your last answer, but I'd love to get your thoughts on like how we move this industry forward through excellence and efficiency.
I think it's putting the residents first.
Mm,
At the end of the day, if
Customers first, yeah.
the customers first, and whether that's the prospective resident, the resident that lives there,
Hmm.
or the resident that moved out, they
Right.
need to have
Red
just
carpet
as
them in or red carpet them out, right?
that is right.
Hmm.
That is right. And I think that that is the place. We've got so much data at our hands
Hmm.
that clients and investors are all looking for answers to why this and why that, and how can you change this or
Drawing
change that,
connections
and
to everything.
drawing a graph. And at the end of the day, if I provide great
Yeah.
service, if I provide a clean environment, if I provide a place that somebody wants to call home, all of those other things are going to be answered.
Hmm.
And, if you go back in time, we didn't have as much data at our hands. And so we weren't on calls all day answering 18,000 questions. We were offering the service.
Yeah.
And that's the place where we've got to find some solutions in my mind, is
Yeah.
really just remembering the whole reason that we are here is to provide a comfortable, um, clean environment that I want to call home and that
Yeah.
feels like a sense of community. And
Yeah.
that's what we're driving home to our people.
It really feels like our industry has a point, really a pivotal point. I think of that intersection of technology and operational and customer service, right? Operational efficiency is what I was referring to. Where do you see the biggest opportunity for innovation just over the next, we'll call it, the question here says 10 years, right? Like, where are we going in 10 years, Renee? You're like,
Mm.
probably into another, economic cycle. I don't know. But let's say maybe more, 5 years out. Where do you see innovation going? And again, feel free to be honest with technology, less or more. Are there going to be opportunities, for restructuring? Are there going to be opportunities to, involve more technology to create more efficiency so that teams can focus on the main things? Where do you think innovation's going?
I think we are just scratching the surface of where we will use AI and in real
Mm,
practical
yeah.
terms. And as an example, I was actually just provided. So we do this project called a talent assessment, and we're reviewing like areas where you're amazing and how we want to pour into those amazing skill sets, areas where there are growth opportunities, and what tools we would give with that. And we took that result of that analysis, shoved it into AI, and it created a development plan
Wow.
and said, with Tony, we would suggest that
A lot of things of
we
improvement.
pour, we pour into this topic because he's really great at, and gave examples of what to utilize to do that, as
Yeah.
opposed to a leader having to go dig and figure out what that
Right.
looked like. Just today, I was using it. We did this I learned something at our Texas Apartment Association One conference from I think it was Jason Dorsey with the over the
Mm-hmm.
top idea session, OTTI. And
Hmm.
we had one yesterday, and I had this big Excel spreadsheet of all these ideas, and I was taking it into Canva to try to make a nice presentation that then just goes out to the team, because I'm not a PowerPoint killer expert or a Canva expert, but if there are tools that can make
Yeah.
me look like a hero, I want to be able to
Here
utilize
for
them.
it, right?
Yes, I think we all think about it as
Hmm.
ChatGPT and make my email sound smart, but we've got to figure out how that is really, really utilized.
Yeah.
Sifting through, issues on properties. Where do we have maintenance concerns? How can we address those maintenance
Yeah.
concerns more readily, with good timing?
Hmm.
So I think that honestly, I
Yeah.
think that's where it is. It's figuring out how to utilize that resource well.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing some of that technology being used today as well. Just almost predictive analysis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Predictive AI to say, sure, this is all the data that we have, sort of current and historical, but now, what could we be looking for in the future? So how can
Right.
the AI bot help humans and collaborate with humans, not take human jobs, but collaborate with, so that we could be aware of things in the future based on historical shifts or issues that maybe you've had at an asset or in a portfolio or whatever the case is. Yeah, great, very well said. So I want to pivot a little bit. We're kind of talking about assets, but let's talk about sort of explosive growth. Obviously, you've been a part of that over the last couple of decades as well. You've seen market cycles, personal transitions. What are been some of your biggest leadership lessons along the way? Obviously, there's a lot of them. 2 decades, there's a lot of learning that happens, and obviously, for someone who's as successful as you've had to learn about a lot of different things and then apply, as we talked about earlier. So, what are some large leadership lessons that you think anyone listening could really take away from your experience?
The one that I say that I wish I probably would have learned a little sooner, and I think that this is different based on everyone's personality,
Hmm.
is I actually have had to revamp and decide that also family comes first.
Mm. Oof.
What goes on my headstone is not what I did for the
Yeah.
multifamily housing industry. It's what I did for my family. And that
Hmm.
kind of has resonated maybe a little later in life. I always was wanting to like do the next thing and take on the next
Climb,
thing.
climb, climb, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Hmm.
and as my sons are, I've one graduating and another going to be a senior next year. You really start to have like you look in the rear view mirror more,
Mm.
and so I just would say I understand that the generation behind us is very
Hmm.
focused on their personal time, and I totally respect that. And I'm down to work with you on that because I respect the fact that you figured
Yeah.
that out at a very young age, and making sure that you position yourself well, but that you remember it is a job and you're going to do the absolute best that you can. And you're not going to beat yourself up too much when things don't go perfectly
Hmm.
because there's going to be another day to live. And, we always say, like, but did anybody die? And if the
Sky
answer
didn't
is
fall,
the
right?
sky didn't fall, everything is fine, and not taking things too personally.
Hmm.
It's very easy, especially on the resident side, when you're serving customers, they are very mad, and people think that they're mad at them and they take it very personal. You have to remind yourself they're not mad at you, they're mad at the situation. And
Or
if
they're
you can,
going through something that
or
you
they're,
just don't even
you
know,
never
right?
know all the blanks in between. And if you can separate yourself from that,
Right.
you just will have you'll provide better customer service and you'll sleep at night better knowing that they're not mad at you. But that
How do
comes
you?
with practice.
Yeah, it's such a thank you for going there, by the way, because that I think that is a hot topic of not just the multifamily industry. I think just of across all corporate industries. Of you know, it's been coined work-life balance, which I'm not sure I love that term either. But how do you? What are some? I want to stay on this just for a minute because I think a lot of people listening will. I know they're looking up to you, but also in this answer, I think they really admire your willingness to go there and say that. Um, how do you gain this perspective though, right? So you're young in your career and you want to work up the ladder and you want opportunities. And hearing an answer that you just said is, ultimately like, focus on the things that matter, but ultimately have patience, right? I think is probably what comes from that answer. Just be patient and smell the roses along the way. And I think for many of us that are ambitious, sometimes myself included, to stop and smell the roses is not always easy. And so obviously, I think you've said, age can help with that, right? Like just his historical perspective, like looking back in the rear view, because maybe you have less years ahead of you than behind you, or whatever the case is. Not you, but I'm just saying anyone,
Sure.
as they get older. Is there any practical tips, just day to day for that young associate? And what I mean by young is just maybe early in their career, not age as much, to have that balanced perspective. Is it an element of trust that what will happen, and just lean into that? And is there anything in particular that you may suggest or shift their perspective to focus on?
You said that you talked about work-life balance. You don't know about that word. I've tried to use the word more work-life harmony. And
Mm,
because
I
I
like that
think
word
that
better. Yeah.
there are times when it's going to be pouring more into work and
Hmm.
it's a season. And then there may be times when you are doing the opposite.
Hmm.
And I do think when you use the word trust, I think that if you lean into some Brene Brown reading, you got to think about being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And if you really do, you need to really work to be vulnerable and have trust within your leader because most leaders are going to be okay with you being vulnerable. I'll never forget this was right in the peak of the pandemic,
Mm.
2020. We were moving schools, and my son said, I'm not getting out of bed to go to school on the first day of eighth grade. And my husband was out of town in a training, and I remember I messaged my boss and I said, I'm going to need grace this week. I said, we have a lot personally going on, and I'm handling it by myself. And I thought this move was awesome, and it's not going so well. And she's like, take the time you need. Your family comes first. And that moment that she said that, I knew that I could put it all aside. And honestly, I probably didn't even need that much. I just needed her to tell me that.
Right.
And then it took this
Just to know you
weight
had the support of
to
that. Yeah.
know that I had the support and it took this weight off my shoulders, but I was vulnerable enough to tell her where I was
Yeah.
and she owned it. But when I talk about that harmony, that doesn't mean I use that all the time That doesn't mean I'm always needing your help, because you lose that trust when it's like I'm always tapping on your shoulder and saying, well, I can't do this and I got to leave early and I
We
got
might
to
not
do
like the
this.
word balance, but
It's
there is something to that word. You don't want to overuse
one or
one or
the
the other,
other.
right?
That's right.
Hmm.
That's right. And it's
Yeah.
because it can be a season in life.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, I love the word harmony because it, they go together very nicely. Obviously that word is able to describe that very well. And I think a lot of professionals, ambitious professionals, frankly, even myself, and feel free to tell us your perspective. But leaning into the family side sometimes too almost feels uncomfortable, or
Mhm.
in a way that you're like, should I be doing this this much, right? Because I'm supposed to be doing this or that, can be even uncomfortable. So I think you provide a great perspective. Now, there's something that we've caught wind that you've said in the past. Don't fill in the blanks. Ask
Oh,
questions. Tell us what you mean by that.
so, I am all about, and this was my leader, a previous leader that I worked for. Her biggest word was always remain curious. And so, whenever a situation comes to you, we call it the telephone game, right? You
Mm,
heard, oh, so and so did this, and so did this, and you filled in all the blanks as to why. It was because of X, Y, and Z. And if you just pause and you don't fill in any of those blanks and you say, I'm going to go ask more questions, tell me more about that. How did we get here? Whether it's a resident situation, an employee situation, there are always two sides of the story, and truth lies usually somewhere in the middle.
mm,
And if you don't fill in the blanks, you will you will just save yourself so much time. You will
mm-hmm.
also save yourself from, creating a story about that person or that situation that just lives on for forever. Because the moment you filled in the blanks, you're probably wrong about most of them.
Yeah. So Renee, great answer. Let's talk a little bit about some, and we have touched on a little bit, some of the leaders in your life, whether within or outside the industry, that have influenced your style, your leadership style, maybe your philosophies. Has there been anyone in particular or any particular style that you feel inspired by or that's influenced you? You've mentioned a really cool story about having that support. So feel free to tell us a little bit about that.
So, early in my career, I talked about growing so much, and we did, I don't know if you've ever done Myers-Briggs, but we did
I
MBTI
did do that.
sessions,
Yeah. Hmm.
and I learned all about myself. I am definitely a thinker more than I am a feeler.
Mm.
And I lovingly called myself or named myself the Black Heart, as if I had a black heart, and I just was all about like making decisions, moving along. And my leader was the total opposite. She was the ultimate feeler, and she
Hmm.
just wanted to love on humans. And I saw,
I
and
hope you
I
don't
had
introduce yourself to your teams though as Renee the Blackheart, right? And you're
Well,
like, oh, okay, this is
what
gonna be.
here's what you learned when you fill in those blanks. What I learned is I am not a black heart at all. Actually,
Mm,
those thinkers, they feel very
mm,
deeply. They just protect their feelings and they keep them very private.
mm.
And so it doesn't mean that they don't feel. It just means that they feel and they show them very differently.
That's very interesting. Somebody actually mentioned in the emojis that are out there that a black heart is a deeper
Th-
feeling,
That's right. That's right.
and I found that interesting. Yeah.
So you're having to learn, and so I had to learn how to take what was my natural
Hmm.
tendencies in leadership and then blend what are not my natural tendencies, and really kind of find and navigate my way to blend somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
And it's, as a leader, it's a you're constantly evolving. I think I'm doing okay, and then you get some new problem or a
Right.
different person that you've never led before,
Right.
and you've got to really adjust your style. So I would say it's very important to always be working to hone your craft. And I'm a big collaborator. So
Mm,
I'm an idea bouncer.
yeah.
I always want, so not only is it, do I love my leaders, but I love having counterparts that I
Mm.
can pick up the phone, because I don't want to go to my boss every time. I don't like, then I feel like I'm a problem if I have to come to you with every
Sure.
decision.
Yeah.
But I also like you're on the right path.
Hmm.
And so I'm more common to go to my counterparts and
Mm.
say, "Hey girl, I'm dealing with this problem and
What do you think? Yeah.
this is what I'm thinking I'm going to do. If you ever dealt with this, is this how you would approach it? Any suggestions?" Because sometimes I just need no, you're totally right on the right path. That's what I would do, or I would tweak it this way. And then I don't have to go to my boss. And
Yeah.
I've found that then we bounce ideas off of each other, and half the time they've been through it before and they've thought of some angle or avenue that I haven't thought of. So I would say find mentors. Like if you and just your counterparts, make really strong relationships with those that are your counterparts. And even those that aren't my coworkers anymore, sometimes they're now my competitors, but they're my friends.
Yeah.
I'll pick up the phone and say, "Hey, so and so, how are you tackling this?"
Well, the reality is, I mean, there's enough to go around to some extent, but it's, we're all handling and dealing with a lot of the same things, and
That's
so
right.
so it's helpful to have those. Very well said, and I think very important for especially early in your career, not even early. I mean, to this day, right? It's still to have those folks in your
Sure.
life. Let's talk a little bit about how to handle failures or setbacks, because those happen. I think a lot of people may perceive from the outside in, or may look at you and see you from the outside and say, "Wow, Renee probably hasn't had a problem in her life, and she is so successful, and she's the president of TAA, former president of Austin Apartment Association, and look at her doing big things at Greystar. She's probably never encountered an obstacle." Obviously, anyone who's been in leadership obviously knows that maybe is not exactly right. But how have you handled, some setbacks in your career? The F word, failure, is an interesting word to use, but we'll lean towards setbacks. Is there anything that you would recommend someone who's facing one now? How they look at it?
Sure. I'm the person that's always going to look internal first.
Mm.
So, I'm not the one that's something happened and they're like, "Oh, well, it was so and so's fault."
Right.
Um, it's more of, "Oh, what should I have shifted? What could I have done differently?"
Hmm.
But I would also say, don't live in the shoulda, coulda world, because at that
Assess and
point,
keep it moving, right?
that's right. Assess, make shift, figure out what you need to adjust, and then keep it moving. The old saying of, if it won't matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes worrying about
If it
it.
won't matter in a week.
Oh, in a
Yeah.
week, it's probably even better. And I think that that is really important.
Hmm.
We're in the fee managed
Mm.
environment,
Right.
and sometimes you get fired. And those are always painful. And we always say, you're allowed to be mad today. You're allowed to be frustrated. You're allowed to dig into it today, and tomorrow you got to show up and move on and operate the real estate that you do have well,
Hmm.
and figure out how you're going to go earn another one. So it's not dwelling. It's not dwelling on those issues, but also not being blind. I don't want to create the same problem, more than once,
Right.
right? Like, if I need to learn from it and I need to
Right.
figure out how to navigate it. And
Yeah,
I
very
think
well.
leaning and I think leaning into accountability, we've
Mm.
kind of forgotten what it I think, especially post COVID, there was a little bit of this. It was so hard to hire, and we
Right.
were
A
like,
lot of leniency, allowing
oh, a
things to.
lot of leniency, and we've got to now figure out, like, I can love you all day long and I don't have to have a black heart, but I can still hold you accountable.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. I know it's not listed here, but I think it's such an important point, is this accountability culture that
Mhm.
probably you and your team are trying to create and continue to strengthen, because you probably know that well, I would imagine your experience also in your career, you were held fiercely accountable to results, not only just by owners and asset managers, but probably by your bosses along your way. And it's interesting that you mentioned the pandemic, because I think there was some shift there because of the great resignation and a lot of shifting happening. And so we were trying to be very generous, just with a lot of things, just to try to settle the ship, if you will. How are you and your team trying to bring that back carefully, but obviously purposely and deliberately?
I think that it is getting really comfortable, and what we used to think were hard conversations, not thinking of them as hard, thinking of them as fair, and having them
Or
in the
essential,
moment.
right? These are, yeah.
Essential,
Hmm.
essential, and having them in the moment. It
Hmm.
gets weirder when you build it up and then you go
We talk
bring
to you
it
about
up.
something a week later, a month later, and you're
Yes,
like,
it's so weird. It's no different than your spouse or your
right.
significant
I was gonna
other,
say it's a
right?
spousal, like, you've been holding on to that for a year.
That's right. And that happens at work too, and it
Yeah.
needs to happen in the moment.
Right.
And that was much easier when you were at the on site, because you're all together all day
Right.
every day, and when
If I
you
don't
get
say something to you right now.
yes,
Yeah.
but that, and I think that
Yeah.
there's the a different generation that's really comfortable with text and conversation, but maybe not direct,
Right.
one-on-one conversation. That is much harder. We just have to make it not weird. And
Yeah.
you have to do it with kindness and with empathy, but that I'm doing it because I want the best for you. And I think it's also asking questions. You were late to work today. Tell me more about that. Is there something that caused that? Do you understand the impact to the business when that happens? Here's why we can't settle on that because it does impact the business. It impacts your
Yeah, or
coworkers.
why it can't continue to happen
That's right.
consistently. Things
That's
happen,
right.
we understand. Yeah, very, very well said. And I think the quote is, we have to stop making things weird. Which ultimately, I think what you're saying is like we just have to humanize these things and address them
Absolutely.
with a big heart, a black heart, a red heart, whatever it is. You just have to address them directly and with empathy, but also firmness and accountability. So very well said. What are some key qualities that you look for when you're building your team, Renee? Is there things that you're looking for as you are structuring your team?
I would say, we talked about flexibility, being
Hmm.
someone that's flexible, someone that remains curious, and someone that's a problem solver. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always the right solution, but that you're coming to me with solution.
And
Uh,
that doesn't mean, I mean, just to clarify for anybody listening, I mean, it doesn't mean like you're solving the world's problems, right? Like you are just solutions oriented and trying to find the
that's right.
answers where you can, and sometimes just lifting up cushions and anything rocks to find some answers. It doesn't have to be solving the world's problems, right?
That's right. And if you're coming to me with a situation, a resident concern, where are we going to get rents, or how are we going to shift our marketing strategy? I'm hoping you already have three ideas in your pocket.
Mm,
And we're going to talk about those three ideas, maybe tweak them, shift them, share some experience on others, invite some collaborators. I'm also hoping that you've gone to your counterparts
mm,
and maybe you brainstormed with them first so that you've really leaned into all of the resources that you have. So, someone that is resourceful is also
mm.
really important.
Yeah, very interesting. Very well said as well. Is something I'm interested in learning, and I'm sure the listeners as well. Can you share an example of a leadership decision that has shaped you or had an impact both on you and maybe even the organization, but I think most interestingly, yourself? And it doesn't have to be a positive one. It could be a decision that maybe that was made, or we're going to go in this direction, and it turned out to be the best direction, and you learned a lot from that, and the team morale built, or we went this direction and we had to quickly make some adjustments
Mm.
because the market or anything else. I'm just obviously trying to throw some things out there, but I'm curious about this one.
There's one that resonates with
Hmm.
me, and I'm sure this would also resonate with our supplier partners,
Hmm.
is when your gut is right, sometimes you need to follow your gut.
Mm.
And when the culture
There's
does
some
not align,
connection here, right, with this gut and
that's
this
when the
some
culture,
neurological connection maybe
that's
here.
right. When the culture doesn't align, there
Mm.
was some business that we took about a year and a half ago, and there was kind of some smoke. We always say where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
There was some smoke as those early conversations happened, but it was a large portfolio, and it had a real what we thought was a benefit, but it
Hmm.
was not. It was not cared
Yeah, there's a lot
for.
of smoke there, and
There
there's
was a lot of smoke, and I think we kind of knew it early on, but we were ignoring some of that smoke and
Mm,
allowing, wanting to have financial success
mm,
supersede how that would impact our culture.
yeah.
And it was harder to unwind from that business than it
Mm,
was to add the business or have said no early on.
yeah.
So there are definitely moments in time where protecting the culture of your company is
Mm,
really important, because people are looking to their leaders about those decisions. They're saying, "You're
mm.
expecting me to work with these conditions. Would you do this?" And if that answer is no, then that's a question you need to ask yourself.
Yeah, very, very well said. I think that probably that smoke metaphor can be not just for business, but even see things in yourself or somebody on your team, right? That you're like, hey, I think there's some smoke there. We should probably address it and make this less weird, and let's make this human, and let's address those things, whether it be
That's
in a
right.
big portfolio or in yourself or even somebody on your team. So thanks for sharing that that honest story. Let's shift gears just a little bit. Let's talk about what motivates Renee personally and professionally. Maybe we get a sense, obviously family is a big part of your life, but are there other motivators that, really that you've discovered over the decades that really motivates you?
I think it's seeing others take on new opportunities.
Mm,
My biggest thing is, I learned, this our industry, it doesn't have a good reputation. It doesn't have a bad reputation. It kind of has no reputation because it's kind of not on the career path.
right.
And I think that everyone that joins after a bit of time gets pleasantly surprised and finds out where it can take them. And so I think what brings me joy is getting to find and bring people to this industry and them getting to navigate it and go in such different directions. I mean,
Hmm.
you've taken a killer, story. You've gotten to go do the things that you
Yeah,
brought
it's
to
been
the
cool.
table early on
Hmm.
and grow with it. And I've seen other leaders that have been with Greystar in other firms
Yeah.
get to go do the same. And it
Hmm.
all started probably from the very beginning at some site level, leasing apartments on the maintenance side. And now they're taking on such big, interesting things.
Yeah, very interesting. And yeah, I think a lot of leaders are in the game for that same reason, right? To just be inspired and motivated to see others flourish because we've had so many great opportunities ourselves, and so our job now is to pay it forward to some extent, right?
That's right.
How do you stay inspired as well? Like, and keep your sort of clear focus on the things that matter. Are there things that you do? We could even get into routines. Is there anything that you kind of helps keep you kind of cleanses the palate, if you will, for the day or for the week, and that allows you really kind of focus and keep the main thing the main thing,
Um,
especially if somebody like you who you oversee so much.
Sure. Honestly, it's my family that keeps me
Hmm.
grounded. Teenage boys will do that to you. You think you're awesome, they'll humble you real quick.
Yes, yes, I have one, and he reminds me. He said, "Nice dad bod" last night. So yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yes. So exactly. So as awesome as you think you are, they will humble you really quickly. And honestly, it really is. I think it's that whole rear view mirror as my kids are getting older. Last night they were both off work. I made a meal. We actually sat down at the table and had dinner.
look at that
And
in 2025.
that's a bit, and I told my husband, I was like, until he goes to college, if we can just do this once a week, that is all I need. And I said, it could be brunch, it could be breakfast, it could be dinner, it can be out, it can
And
be
he
at
looked at
home.
your sons and said, "Listen, your mom would like
This
us to
is
do
all
this,
she,
okay?
he's like, this is no, you need to help me with this.
Just
Yes.
come on, we're all in this
Come
to
on.
take care of your mom here, all right?"
Yeah. So that's, I would say, what, fills my bucket. And as your kids get older too, and they start to become little
Yep.
adults, it's kind of fun for them to start asking a few questions about what you do for a living and tell me more about that, mom, because they are getting curious. They never knew. I think they
Yeah.
might have thought I was, in the bottom floor in my bathrobe too. Who knows? So them figuring it out is interesting. And, I would say I have some hobbies, but I'm a hobby dabbler. I was a baker for a
Little this, little
while.
that, right?
Yeah,
Make a cool hat here and there.
I love to bake, but I haven't done it as much as I was
Yeah.
before, cake decorating and specialties, especially when the boys were little to make fancy birthday parties that they didn't care about. It was about me, let's be real. Um,
How about this cake, guys? It's interesting you actually mentioned that hobbies because it's sometimes a question. I have a lot of kids, as you may know, 4 children. You have children, of course, as well. I'll sometimes interact with somebody who doesn't have children, right? Or
mhm.
maybe wanting to start a family. Is there any suggestion? You mentioned hobbies, right? I mean, is there any obviously your family has played a big role in kind of grounding you and giving you sort of motivating you and inspiring you and humbling you, as you said before. How about those who maybe don't have kiddos? Maybe it's fur babies, maybe it's hobbies, maybe it's other things. Any advice for them to kind of make sure that they're decompressing or finding ways to shift their perspective from maybe a stressful day at work or a stressful career moment? Any suggestions there before we jump over to the lightning round?
I think it would be finding your own sense of community.
Mm,
There are different places that you can find that sense of community. And I read so much about how much that can impact longevity of,
mm.
the human brain as
Being a
well,
part of a community, yeah.
being a part of a community. And so figure
Whatever
out
that looks like for you,
whatever that
right?
looks like. Who are your
Right.
who are your people? And maybe if it's with your furry friends, maybe it's at the dog park or,
Right.
we've actually been having our neighbors over with their dogs in the backyard. It's an easy 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, gathering, short and sweet, simple, doesn't take a lot of fuss. But what a great way to connect with someone in the
Hmm.
community.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, community is huge. Whether your community is your family because they're just in your house and
That's right.
biologically attached to you, or not, it's your tribe, it's your people, as you said. All right, so buckle up, Renee. We got a lightning round of questions. So don't think we just want answers, okay?
You bet. All right.
And
No
I know you're a
pressure.
thinker based on your Myers-Briggs. All right, so all right, so the first one: if you weren't in multifamily, what career would you pursue?
Mm.
You're
Architecture.
thinking a
Yeah,
lot there.
sorry. Architecture. Architecture. I would have loved to have been an architect. Yeah.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. What's your favorite industry conference?
Oh, honestly, I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to say the Greystar WAM conference. We have a
Ooh,
women's
okay,
asset manager
okay.
conference. It's all girls. It's girl
Hey,
power. It is like the smartest women in our industry across the
that's awesome.
country, all in one room.
That's awesome. I thought it was going to either go Greystar conference or a TAA, one of the two,
Yep.
right? Name your favorite a podcast. Do you do
Uh,
podcasts?
yeah, honestly, the one that I'm the most consistent on is every morning I listen to the Morning Brew. It's
Okay,
my it's my way to get my like national news, feel just smart enough to have a conversation for the day.
I've heard something about that. Right, that's the way to go. Well, what's one thing about you that may surprise people?
Hmm. My first name is January, like the month.
Oh, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're friends like that I can call you that yet, but hopefully,
Only
hopefully
my
one day.
grandparents. Only my grandparents still call me that.
Fair enough. What's your favorite productivity hack or tool?
Oh.
Is there anything that keeps you
So
productive?
here's what's fun. Here's one that's funny that my team always picks on me
Stress,
on
Tony.
is in Outlook you can use focus time and it goes and finds specific time on your calendar that's available and
Ooh,
blocks it out for you to actually do your
mm,
work and it
take note of
turns
that.
off people can't ping you on Teams like your phone doesn't ring.
So you
I'm
appear to
not
be busy to the outside world.
But it's also a reminder to you, and you can go label it like focus time, and I'll give myself the tasks I'm
Hmm.
supposed to do. We forget to give ourselves time to actually do our job.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you, it's not about me, but shifting from operations into more project, based projects that I work on these days. And yeah, you really have to find that creative time or the block of time that you could really
That's
focus
right.
on it. Operations oftentimes is like massive fire putting out every single
Yes.
moment of the day, but that blocks of time to really focus on whether it be reports in your world or creative projects maybe in mind, really important. Do you have a morning routine? And if so, what does it look like? Is it red light therapy? Like what are
Oh
we
my
doing?
gosh. I've read that. You talked about it. We talked about a book. I've read the start of Atomic Habits 18 times because
Ooh,
I'm like, I'm going to be this person. I'm going to wake up at 5:30. I'm going to do all of this stuff. I'm not a morning person. I would say
yeah.
maybe my nighttime routine is more impactful than my morning routine.
Can you? Is it is
You
it
know,
is
it's
it
like
tea or herbal
it's like
tea? And
it's like I'm gonna kill my brain with some TikToks for a little while. I'm gonna
okay,
really wash my face, put some face cream on, do the, uh 20-minute face care. And then I'm also gonna sit and turn off all electronics and hang
mm,
with my husband for a bit because
it's
that's
nice of
the
you.
other person you got to spend time with for the rest of this journey. And the morning routine, I will say the only thing I do consistently most mornings is my AG1 with my vitamins.
Mm. Aside from brush your teeth and wash your face,
Oh,
right?
well, that's like you can't even walk out of the you
Those
can't
those are
even leave
table
like that
stakes,
is
Tony.
like you walk up and walk to the sink first.
I'm just kidding you. Listen, we have this next question. Your last book, we talked about this and kidded about this. I actually want to change this question briefly. You mentioned your nighttime routine is killing brain cells on TikTok. Is there a particular TikTok a person that you follow that you love their content
Oh.
that you could think of, or is there a type of video that you just love to watch right now?
Oh my gosh. I just find that like it just listens to you. I think it's more about how it listens to you.
You're like creeped
And
out. You're
it's
like, how do you
creepy.
know I love all of this?
Well, yesterday I was on site touring and this woman came and she had the cutest little baby French bulldog and I've always said I wanted one. Okay,
And then that night, French
I
bullies are.
mentioned it to my husband, and then oh my gosh, what is appearing? And so there's just something crazy about that in my mind. But I
Or like
can't say
criminal
that
or something, right? It's like,
fashion trends, there's this, and I don't even know her name, but there's this one
yeah,
woman that she does like this mix of she goes thrifting and secondhand shopping, and I love her outfits and her looks that she puts together. So
cute.
I'm a big fan.
Inspired by some of those looks. And then lastly, if there's any skill that you could master, what would it be?
Ooh, oh my God. playing the piano.
Flying, maybe, or
Playing the piano. My husband bought
oh,
me a piano for Christmas a year and a half ago. Not a piano, a
okay.
keyboard, because I said I wanted to take
Okay.
lessons.
Okay. Piano is maybe different than a
No, no,
keyboard. Okay.
well, but it was a big keyboard to actually
Okay.
like not like a little,
All right. So you set it up. Yeah. It's not just a
yeah,
little baby keyboard. All right.
yes, yes. I still have not taken any lessons. It's actually still in the box. So when I talk about that I have ideas of hobbies,
Maybe in the
it
next
is a
couple of
problem.
decades, we'll get there,
It
play
is.
piano and,
It
and
is.
do some of those things. Well, thanks for being
Yes.
honest and having fun with us along the way. And now we know, some of that brain rot that you're doing as well. So, some of your team
We're
members,
normal.
a different generation may not feel as bad when they're brain rotting all evening. Lastly, it may seem obvious, but if someone wanted to reach out to you or get in touch with you, or maybe had interest in joining the Greystar team, how can they go about doing that?
Ooh, find me on LinkedIn. I think that would
Okay.
probably be the easiest. Send me a message on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way, and I'll be glad to connect you with our recruiter,
Mhm.
or even just direct leaders within the market.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, Renee, this has been fun, and as we talked about the Texas candor, of course, and really, it's been a fun masterclass in leadership, longevity, staying grounded, while continuing to be very ambitious. So, thanks for again bringing your full self to this conversation, and why so many people look up to you.
Oh, thanks, Tony.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, to everybody, to all of our listeners, thanks for hanging out with us today. Hope we enjoyed this episode. Drop us a rating, or share it with somebody in multifamily who could use a little inspiration. Again, I'm Tony Sousa, and this has been Multifamily Excellence. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of Multifamily Excellence, brought to you by With Me. With Me is making lives better every day through convenient technology-enabled amenities for the multifamily industry and beyond. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.